I'm the dude. So that's what you call me.
Are you a virgin?
Yeah, not since I was 10.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Come on to the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Can I return it if it doesn't fit?
It always fits. Eventually.
Welcome back, Movie Minglers. This is Caveman.
And I'm Maggie.
And we're doing episode 22, the Grand Budapest Hotel. Yay! Now, actually, this is fun because this is our second Wes Anderson film and the first of his live action and the only live action film. So this is the last Wes Anderson film on the list.
Well, it was nice knowing you, Wes.
I'm actually really surprised because, I mean, Grand Budapest, I believe, is rated as one of his, I mean, it's on this list, but
yeah, it is one of his top films. It is
one of his top films. This and French Dispatch, I've noticed, are like his most well-received from critics and audiences. Because I don't think, even though critics love Wes Anderson, mostly...
Yeah, it's not always, like...
It's not always audience.
A widely received... Like, people love Wes Anderson, but it's not always a widely received thing. Personally, I kind of feel like Wes Anderson movies are better to watch at home than in a theater. I don't know if I've ever seen a Wes Anderson movie in a theater. I saw The Fantastic Mr. Fox we saw in theater.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any moment that I saw a Wes Anderson live-action film in the theater.
Those are very much like movies that you watch on home on a rainy Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. I guess it's because his films don't necessarily need...
No, they don't need a big screen, and they don't necessarily need big sound. I mean, it's probably be better with them.
It's probably really enjoyable with big screen and big sound.
If I could go see the Royal Tenenbaums on a big sound stage, I absolutely would.
Yeah, do like a Wes Anderson fest.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun, actually. Fathom, get on that.
Yeah, that would be fun, and I'd probably watch like some choice ones that I like.
But also, this movie came out in 2014 when it has been established that in 2014, Caveman and I had very busy lives where going to the movies was not necessarily a thing that we could do unless it was like a big Marvel film, you know. Like, we were going for the big films. We weren't going for the little itty-bitties that we knew we could just watch on
Not back
home
then.
video.
2014. No. There was a lot happening.
There was a lot happening that year for us. So, yeah, there's a reason why. The main reason why we didn't see this movie in theater is, like, we were just too damn busy.
Well, the Grand Budapest Hotel came out in 2014, like you said, and was directed by Wes Anderson, as we all know. It was written by Wes Anderson and Hugo Guinness, who also wrote The French Dispatch and was the voice of Bunce in Fantastic Fox.
Oh, okay.
Bunce being one of the villains of the three farmers in that movie. It was also based off of, loosely based, I don't know exactly how based off, because I tried to do some research first to see how much was taken from the writings of Stefan Zweig. He's Austrian, so however you say Z-W-E-I-G.
Zweig.
Zweig. He was a Austrian-born Jewish man who lived during World War II. So he was moved from Austria to England, and he wrote a lot of books, material, not novels necessarily, just a lot of
short stories,
a lot of writings,
a lot of stories, yeah.
Political, historical, geographical, a lot of writings. But because he was Jewish, his books were banned in Austria and Germany, and so he was moved to England, and then later on went to New York City, and then ended his career and spent the rest of his life in Brazil with his second wife. And unfortunately, because of the things that he wrote about, a lot of times had to do with the downfall of Europe. Yeah. And he became very depressed about the state of Europe, even after World War II, and ended up, him and his wife killed themselves in their home in Brazil. Oh. This film was filmed in Germany, mainly because of the tax breaks, but also because they got a lot of inspiration from the buildings, the exterior shot was based off of a lot of that.
I mean, the film is set in a fictional Eastern European country, so the fact that they went to Europe to film it makes sense.
Even though a lot of Wes Anderson films look like they are just sets, like backdrop sets of a stage play. They got a lot of inspiration from Germany. They even shot the interior of the hotel at an old, abandoned kind of mall in a way. It's like a shop, like this massive, like 3-4 story shopping
space center.
Yeah,
mall. It's a mall.
Yeah, kind of in Germany.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the filming was done for interiors.
Let's go to the mall. Jawohl. The mall.
Okay. The music was done by the guy that Wes Anderson turns to for all his films.
Alexander Desplat.
Alexander Desplat.
And this was the music that won over Interstellar.
It was.
And I kind of see it.
Yeah.
I could kind of see it.
Kind of see it, but I don't know. Hans Zimmer's score for Interstellar was so good, which I'm still a little surprised.
Yeah. I feel like this was really the Oscar darling that year, right? Like, this won a lot.
This won quite a few, but not a lot. Well, okay.
What's the difference between quite a few and not a lot?
It won 4 Oscars.
Okay. That's
135 awards altogether.
Yeah.
But 4 from the Oscars.
Okay.
And they were kind of big ones. I mean, you've got costume design, hair and makeup, original score, and production design.
Okay.
Those are some big ones. That was the year that Birdman swept the Oscars.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense.
So Birdman took home screenplay, cinematography, direction by Alejandro Inarritu, best film, all went to Birdman.
Okay.
And then editing and best supporting actor went to good old Whiplash.
Oh, God, it always comes back to Whiplash.
I think Whiplash is part of every podcast we do now. We're just cursed.
I have a friend and former coworker who isn't interested in movies too much, but he is interested in Whiplash, so he listened to our Whiplash episode. And unfortunately, the last time I saw him, we didn't get to talk too much about it, but he did say that he felt like we were a little too harsh on that movie. And I was like, yeah, because we hated it.
Yeah.
He was like, but you just didn't understand it. And I was like, no,
I'm pretty sure I
got it. And I hated it. I would like to sit down with him more and talk more about it.
Yeah, a little more detail. Like, what don't you think I understood about it?
What didn't I get? But that's okay, because art is subjective.
Of course.
And not only are we making art, but we're talking about art. And, we can sit here all day and be like, we don't fully understand why Alexander Desplat won over Hans Zimmer's Interstellar, because we preferred the Interstellar music, but I also kind of get it because his music was light and whimsical.
It was.
It used,
it wasn't a bad sound or score at all.
They used Russian instruments mainly to give it that Eastern European sound. Like the music, especially during the ski chase. I even wrote down that the music during the ski chase might have been what won them the award. So, art is subjective, and sometimes you just don't like something that other people love, and vice versa. It's okay.
The reason I'm still leaning towards Hans Zimmer's Interstellar score is because I found this score just a little repetitive. And it happens a lot in Wes Anderson films where he just uses the same
themes.
And it just keeps going and going throughout all the whole movie. And yeah, it changes up and there are different music.
Yeah.
But I guess you just hear the same theme a lot.
I don't know. I guess I would have to sit down and, if I really wanted to get into...
Just listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, I would have to sit down and listen to the Interstellar soundtrack.
Interstellar and then this one back to back.
Oh boy.
Well, just like Alexander Desplat is the guy that Wes Anderson goes to for his music in his movies, cinematographer Robert D. Yeoman has worked on every Wes Anderson film, except for Fantastic Mr. Fox, which we talked about in that podcast, was done by a guy who has experience with stop motion, which is why he was used for that film, which makes total sense. Yeoman, like I said, has been working on these films for a long time. He used one single camera for this entire movie, and they had to use so many different rigs to do different shots because it was just cheaper to use a single camera. There's a lot of really clever things that they did throughout the film to get it the look that they got.
Yeah. I mean, the use of letterbox I found interesting too.
A lot of switching back and forth between aspect ratios, 16:9 versus I can't remember what the other one is, but it's the smaller, boxier one. Not necessarily sure why one was used and the other, why they kept going back and forth.
You know what I kind of noticed as I was watching it?
What's that?
Is that when it went to the smaller aspect ratio is when it had anything to do with the bad guys. So, like, Willem Dafoe and Adrian Brody's characters were often almost entirely filmed using the more, like, condensed letterbox. I don't even know if that's actually the correct term for it. But the smaller aspect ratio. And then when it was just, like, Ralph Fiennes and Tony Ravioli. Tony Revolori. Tony Revolori. It's going to be a tough one. And considering that Steve and I have always jokingly called him Tony Ravioli for years. But nonetheless, when it's Zero and Gustav running around, it's in the larger aspect. And then I think that when it's the author and Mr. Mufasa talking, it's even a bigger aspect. So I think that's kind of how it breaks down. But I did find that anytime you saw, like, Adrian Brody or Willem Dafoe on screen, the ratio was smaller because they were the bad guys. I don't know why that was chosen, but that's kind of what I caught on to once I realized that the aspect ratio was changing.
This movie was made for $31 million, which is, I think, I didn't look it up, but I know a lot of his movies are usually cheaper. So this seemed like they gave him a little bit of bigger budget for this one.
Yeah. I can't imagine him making like a $200 million film. That'd be insane.
No. That's definitely much more than he needs. I love the fact that he has always stuck with a lower budget.
Caveman and I saw this movie once several years ago. I don't exactly know when. I think there's one lazy weekend afternoon where we were like, you know what we haven't watched yet is the Grand Budapest Hotel. And so we sat down and we watched it. We enjoyed it thoroughly because, of course, it's such a charming and sweet little film. All I remembered of it before we started it yesterday was Ralph Fiennes, Tony Revolori. Wow, I'm never going to get that right. I'm so sorry, sir. Saoirse Ronan. And I can say Saoirse just fine, but I cannot say Revolori.
That's what happens when you say ravioli too many times.
Damn it. It's all your fault, too. You were the one that came up with that. I didn't remember, like, as soon as I saw Tilda Swinton, I remembered that she was in it. As soon as I saw Bill Murray, of course he's going to be in it. Owen Wilson, absolutely, is going to have a little cameo. But I genuinely forgot what the cast was. And the cast is just solid character actors across the board.
The movie made $163 million worldwide, which is great for a Wes Anderson movie going over 100. $12 million from media sales. And since it is from 2014, Blu-ray sales were higher. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you were talking about the cast, let's get into the cast because it's so...
It's stacked.
So we've got, of course, the main actor in the whole thing. We got Ralph Fiennes, who
does such a great job.
I mean, he's a great actor.
What a charming douchebag. I love him so much. He's so suave and smarmy at the same time, and it's great.
I love him so much in this movie and just as an actor in general. Then you got F. Murray Abraham,
who I forgot was in this, but was a delight.
Adrian Brody and Willem Dafoe play our villains, which are such great villains.
Willem Dafoe is such a great villain. Yeah. Also, Adrian Brody and Willem Dafoe could totally London Bridge me. I would just...
Jesus. Why, dude?
Because the world needs to know that Adrian Brody and Willem Dafoe could get it hard.
Wow.
Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum.
He could join in too.
As our lawyer, I guess you could say.
I
think Maggie's just going to go through the whole cast.
I just threw him
You're just going to go through the whole cast.
I would...
One at a time.
Okay, like, let's be real honest here. I would...
Harvey Keitel?
Yes.
Jude Law?
Absolutely.
Bill Murray?
A younger Bill Murray.
Edward Norton?
No.
Saoirse Ronan?
Yes.
Jason Schwartzman?
Only if he was his character from Parks and Rec.
Lea Seydoux?
Yeah, I mean, she's beautiful, yeah.
Which, if I only know her from the Mission Impossible movies, really.
No, James Bond movies.
James Bond, that's
Yeah.
right. James Bond. Hey, it's the same thing. One's American, one's British. I think.
Tilda Swinton, absolutely. Tom Wilkinson, maybe in his youth. Owen Wilson, only as Mobius.
Tony Revolori.
And yeah, why not? I'd throw him a bone. So yes, I would sleep with most of this cast. Because just hottie after hottie after hottie. But like, Willem Dafoe's at the top of that list. And Jeff Goldblum's a very close second.
The reveal one by one of the crossed keys.
Yes. Yeah, the all the different...
order of the crossed keys, all the different hotel managers.
concierges.
Concierge, like, I mean, Bob Balaban has been in 1,000 things, and whenever you see him, he's just one of those character actors where you're like, I know that guy, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Fisher Stevens, who I've always loved.
He has an Oscar.
Fisher Stevens has an Oscar?
Fisher Stevens won an Oscar for Best Documentary a couple years back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I remember that happening, and then, yeah.
And everybody collectively went,
So that's what Fisher Stevens has been up to.
Bob Wodorowski was one of the
Or
Wallace
Wallace
Wodorowski.
That's
yeah,
right.
Sorry. He was the little opossum from Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's the main cast.
Yeah, the cast is great. I mean, it's a top tier Wes Anderson cast. You know, where yes, like Gustav and Zero are the main characters, but as you go through, each actor has time to shine, each character has time to shine, and they're all just really fantastically portrayed. I don't think that there's any particular cast member that does a poor job. Like, everybody kills it. So one thing that I find interesting about this movie and its cast, and I get it, I kind of understand it now that I'm looking at it on IMDb, but the fact that Tony Revolori.
Might as well just call him Ravioli because.
I want to get his name right.
Do you need to write it down?
If I can say Saoirse Ronan, I can say Tony Revolori.
Revolori.
Ralph Fiennes and Tony Revolori are the two main characters in this whole film.
Yeah.
It is Gustav and Zero. But Revolori doesn't get... He's the very last credit. And I get it, because he's technically... was, quote-unquote, introducing him. Whether or not it was actually Sarsome, I don't know for sure. But... And, like, I get that he's not going to get top bill over, like, Bill Murray or Harvey Keitel or Goldblum. But I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I've always felt bad for actors that do the most and get the very last credit, if that makes sense. I just wonder if that's something that, I think if I was an actor, that would hurt me. I'd be like, I'm in this movie more than fucking, like, Edward Norton. Why is he several people above me? But now that I'm looking at the way that the cast is listed, it's actually Ralph Fiennes gets top billing and everybody else is in alphabetical order. So... Like,
yeah,
it makes sense, but I'd be kind of pissed.
This was Tony Revolori's first, like, big movie.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was, like, TV shows, which he was just appearing, like, once in, and, TV movies, short films, stuff like that. So this was his first big theatrical debut.
And that's great.
Before Spider-Man came out.
Get him and introducing. But I just feel like, man, he carries the weight of this film on his shoulders. Whereas Gustav is, like, this bright, fantastical, brilliant, ethereal creature. Zero is the everyman. He's the audience proxy. He's great. He's does such a fantastic job. Yeah. I really, truly loved him in this movie. And I'm glad that he's still working with Wes Anderson. I mean, I know that he was in all those little short films with Benedict Cumberbatch and Ralph Fiennes and, all those little... shorts on Netflix by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl. Yeah. Well, I can't say any names today. I'm recovering from a wrist injury and everything hurts and it's all stupid, friends. So if I'm off my rocker today, it's because I'm in pain. So, you want to get into the plot of it all?
Yeah, I mean, the plot is
delightfully all over the place.
It's
in
wild.
A true Wes Anderson
It's a really
movie.
wild one where you really have to pay attention to everything that's happening, all the different twists and betrayals, and who's who, and what their motivations are. And I mean, essentially, you've got this very popular concierge at a very prestigious hotel, but not prestigious anymore. Well, when F. Murray Abraham is telling the story, the hotel's not as grand as it used to be.
So this movie is there's a lot of flashbacks, and there's a lot of authors telling stories to other people in this film. So like,
It's true.
the movie starts with
a girl
with a girl visiting the tomb of Jude Law's and Tom Wilkinson's character.
Yes.
Right. So the movie starts in like the 80s. Then it flashbacks to the 50s.
She's reading a book.
She's reading a book called The Grand Budapest Hotel. And then we get kind of the narration from Tom Wilkinson playing the older author, who is telling the story about his life as a younger man, who is
played
Jude
by
Law.
Jude Law.
Right. And then Jude Law is talking to F. Murray Abraham, who is telling a story about
when he was
young back in the 30s pre-war.
Right.
So there's a lot of, like, it's a lot of book inception.
It is. It is a book inception. It's like falling through the layers
Yes.
to go back in time, and then going back through the layers back to where we started.
And I really enjoyed that.
It was a fun way of telling a story.
The use of an author telling a story is a great narrative tool, right? But this is an author telling a story about a man telling him a story about the life that he lived. So yeah, you've got to get through those layers first.
Which reminds me real fast. It reminds me of Life of Pi, because Life of Pi was told the same exact way, of an author interviewing somebody who's telling a story about what happened when they were younger. They're just missing. Life of Pi was just missing the person reading that book that later comes out.
Yes, and
which I guess is the audience in that case reading Life of Pi, but.
And so the bulk of this story, really what we'll be talking about the most, I imagine that we'll talk a little bit about Jude Law and F. Murray Abraham's side of things, because they had wonderful chemistry, and it was kind of...
I wish I got more of them.
A little bit, yeah. It was really fun not only seeing how dilapidated the Grand Budapest had become, but I also really enjoyed Jason Schwartzman's concierge, and I just kind of liked that world. In that enchanting old ruin, as they call it. But the bulk of the story takes place pre-war in this tiny little Eastern European alpine country called Zabrokia.
Yeah, it was a big name with a lot of consonants.
Zabroka, yeah. So in the tiny little Eastern European alpine country, Zabroka was the Grand Budapest Hotel, which was one of the best hotels that you could stay in the 20s and 30s. And, it's overran by Ralph Fiennes as Gustav, the concierge, who is flamboyant and maybe queer. Although, I mean, they kind of hint at it a couple of times, but he's, if anything, he's bisexual. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's not fully straight. He sleeps with a lot of older women, but he flirts with a lot of dudes. So, he's bi or he's European. It remains to be seen, especially in the 30s. He likes to bed older, rich, blonde, needy women because they give him gifts, and that's what he likes. And, it's a system that works well for him, right? He takes care of these old women and their needs, wink, wink, and, they lavish gifts upon him. And where everything goes squirrely is when Tilda Swinton, who... even in makeup, making her look like she's 85, is still so goddamn hot. She comes along and is like, I think I'm going to die soon. And he's like, you're not, darling. It's going to be fine. But surely enough, she shuffles off this mortal coil. And her death and her will are ultimately what lead Gustav and Zero, his new lobby boy, who's played by Tony Revolori, on this madcap adventure about a stolen painting and... breaking out of prison and, running from the police, fabulous pastries, and all sorts of fun things. It's a really, it's a really funny, straightforward story, It
is. It's just got, like you said, even with the layers of going back in time to tell the story, it's got a lot of layers just telling the story alone.
Yeah, because it's not just all about, a Zero and Gustav running around. I mean, Dimitri, played by Adrian Brody, and his henchman, Joplin, played by Willem Dafoe. Dimitri is the son of Tilda Swinton, and he thinks he's going to get all the money in the will, but then mommy Tilda Swinton leaves this priceless painting to Gustav, and that causes a whole thing, and then Joplin keeps killing people, and it's a lot of delightful chaos. And mixed into all of this is Saoirse Ronan's character, who is the love interest to Zero, and she just is a sweet, feisty girl that works in a bakery who gets roped in to like hiding chisels and
hammers and stuff
into
inside cookies. That looked so perfect that
they were such beautiful pastries.
That the guard who checks stuff
all the food.
food for hidden things was just like, well, it's too nice to.
Yeah,
and small.
And it was too nice and too small to be anything, right? Because you think if you're going to hide a hammer in something, you're going to hide it in a loaf of meat or a loaf of bread or a pie or something. But in a thin cookie, you can't hide anything. But she can.
I know they were small, but the way he kind of looks at them, I'm like,
yeah, they
he doesn't want to ruin them.
Yeah. From Mendel's Bakery.
So cute.
And, all the while, like going through all of this, like Ray Fiennes is constantly trying to teach Zero how to live life the way he did, and it kind of showed a lot of the kindness and the generosity that Gustav has in life and for other people. They come back on him tenfold a lot, Edward Norton's character trusts Gustav to an extent because Gustav was kind to him when he was a small child in the hotel who was lonely, and Gustav hung out with him. Gustav is, always showers compliments and kindness on, random people because they deserve it, because that's the thing that we should all be doing. And it pays him back. He just wants to be, he's a concierge. Yeah, he's a concierge. He's there to help people, right? He's there to make people's lives better. But even when he gives the gruel, the mush to one of the inmates in the jail, and he just like, oh, darling, it'll fill you right up. And here, it needs a little pinch of salt to make everything better. And like this big lumbering guy eats this
with
mush.
A massive scar on his face.
Yeah, and like it kind of, the warmth of the food and the warmth of the kindness that Gustav has for him sort of melts everything away.
Pays off later.
Yeah, it pays off later. The way he complimented Harvey Keitel's drawings of the the prison. There was a brief moment where you could see this pride in Harvey Keitel's face because somebody's complimenting him on his artistry. Gustav is a good man. He's a bit of a conceited asshole.
Sure,
when it comes to like what he wants and likes.
Yeah.
But he's nice to everybody. And it really shows. And I found that very beautiful about his character. It was like, throughout this entire life change of his, right? His whole life is upended because of the death of Tilda Swinton, and everything in his world changes. He's still teaching Zero how to be a good concierge.
Yeah, and when he first meets Zero, he's like, "Wait, who are you?"
Yeah,
and he's like, "I'm the lobby boy," and he's like, "I'm sorry, we didn't hire a lobby boy. I would have known about that." And the guy who's, I guess, in charge of hiring is just like, "Oh, he's just here on a trial basis, waiting for your approval."
Yeah,
and Gustav's like, "Well, we'll see about that."
Yeah,
and Zero's just so committed to impressing him and being a good lobby boy.
Yeah,
that. It doesn't take long. It really only takes till Tilda Swinton's character dies, and they take a train to her estate, and along the way get stopped by the soldiers.
Yeah. Who don't like
Zero because
paper. They don't like his paperwork. He's an immigrant.
He's an immigrant.
He's an illegal refugee.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were going to arrest him or do something worse to him. And then, of course, Edward Norton's character steps in, and they talk about how well Gustav treated him as a boy.
Yeah.
But in that moment, first, a couple things happened. First, I like that when they have that kind of scuttle with the soldiers, they both get bloody noses from it, and it's like coming out of on both of them. Like their injuries are exactly the same, which made me like, anytime anybody gets beat up, it's just two nose drips coming out of both nostrils. This movie is really subtle in certain parts with its imagery, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss some really clever.
Yes.
I love how clever a lot of the imagery is, a lot of the lines.
This is definitely a movie
this is definitely
deserves
worth
a repeat viewing. Yeah.
Absolutely. But
the fact that we've only seen it twice shocks me, because it is such a sweet, charming movie. But I never
and fun. It's so much fun to watch.
It is a real delight. Although, It's also kind of melancholy too, though. Like, it's a really fun watch up until the end. Because at the end of it, I mean, if we want to get into it now, we can. But, like, at the end of it, we lose Gustav in a very tragic way. We lose Agatha and, mention
really
of an
shockingly
infant.
and quickly and
So
off screen.
quickly, yeah. And, like, you find out that Agatha and Zero had such a short time with each other.
Yeah.
And,
It does have a really
Yeah, so-
melancholic ending.
the ending is very, sort of melancholy.
But everything in between is
fun, yeah, and bright and silly. I loved the use of miniatures for set pieces because, like, clearly that hotel is a miniature, right? Clearly, actually a lot of the established sets very much
shots
look like they're
are miniatures.
matte paintings and miniatures.
Ski slope was miniature.
Yes.
The
monkery,
the trolley going up the mountain was a miniature, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, where the monks were at the end. What is that? A convent? No, a convent's for nuns. Where do monks hang out?
A
Rectory. You can see that we're not religious.
not when it comes to monks.
Not in that way. The monkery. It was the sets, everything. This movie is just so charming.
But real quick, I was going to say the other thing about that little scuttle they had. There was a moment where Gustav yells out, "Get your hands off my lobby boy." And then Zero looks at him like, "I'm your lobby boy?" Like, making it official because Gustav has fallen in love with this kid who
I think kind of reminds him
and
of
stands up
himself,
for him.
too.
He stands
Yeah.
up for him instantly.
Well, and also at the very end we find out, because Zero asks Gustav at one point, "Were you ever a lobby boy?" And it is later confirmed that yes, he,
First he's
Gustav
like, "What do you
too
think?"
also started as a lobby boy and worked his way up. I love the scene when they go back to the hotel and Zero meets up with another lobby boy.
Yeah.
And
instantly starts training him.
Yeah, instantly starts training him and sort of like chiding him for not doing the job correctly.
They needed information,
Yeah.
so they asked the lobby boy for information. He just freely gives it up, and then Zero's like, "Why would you do that?"
Don't ever. You're a lobby boy. You're never supposed
Don't
to do
do
that.
that.
Like
Yeah.
that was very cute. I also really loved the long running gag where anytime Agatha was around Gustav, Zero would be like, "Don't flirt with her. Is he flirting with you? Don't flirt with her." Like, just his sort of slight jealous protectiveness over his girl because he sees how Gustav kind of treats, he doesn't mistreat women, but he does go through women a lot. But I always really liked how a lot of the time, anytime Agatha was around, Zero was telling Gustav, "Don't flirt with her."
Yeah.
That made me giggle.
I wish Ralph Fiennes would do more comedies.
Yes, I agree. I think that he has
think he's-
a very effervescent sort of charm when it comes to funny movies. And considering how many like villain roles he's played in the past, especially around this time, I mean, this was right after all the Harry Potters had come out.
This was after all the Harry Potters.
And he's playing one of the biggest villains of all time there.
Red Dragon.
Yeah, like he plays a lot of bad guys, so it's really fun to see him play somebody that's charming and romantic and silly and proud. Like it's a great change. That's why he was interested in the role, was because it was such a change from the characters he had been playing lately.
Since this is a smaller movie, and of course Wes Anderson has great ways of showing, of framing things. Him and his cinematographer have great ways of framing things, and when you're trying to get a specific shot, because you always got to remember what you're seeing, your POV when you're watching a movie is all coming from the camera, and sometimes you're like, how, especially with somebody who's just practical, maybe some CG here and there, especially for background. There was this great moment that I loved when they are arriving at Tilda Swinton's estate for him to pay respects to the body. They are coming in a car, and pulling up to this massive house with a huge gate. And the camera just goes towards, almost like you're riding a ride on like Mr. Toad's Wild Adventure. Like you're pulling up to the gate, and the gate opens, and the camera, probably on like a track going forward, just goes forward towards the estate and all these stairs and stuff. But to show that they're in a car, and because the camera is supposed to be the car's point of view,
You just see the hood.
yeah, and so when it the camera does this big, quick push in to the house, but then the car does a quick turn, but the camera stays on the house. And I love when to show that the car turned, you got the headlights that just kind of go to the left, and you see the headlights just kind of sweep across the property. But I could just see somebody holding lights or having some kind of setup where the lights are just being like pushed to the side. Same thing with Gustav and Zero on the train. There's some great behind the scenes look at of them pushing. They have this setup where it's Ralph Fiennes and Zero sitting on seats.
Like the car or the train like seating
area,
and then there's somebody behind that's like pulling trees out of the way, so it looks like the trees are passing.
Yeah,
and
it's a fun.
Yeah, it's a very clever. Honestly, I feel like if you like movies,
that's how you make a movie for $30 million.
Yeah,
you can't use
the practical effects,
real trains.
But a lot of
or cars.
I feel like that if you really wanted to get into how Wes Anderson makes these whimsical films, watching the background behind the scenes stuff is always very charming because, yes, he had $30 million to make a movie, which, God, if somebody gave us $30 million tomorrow, it would be amazing. The way this man makes movies is very kind of old classic with old classic techniques, right? Yeah. Things that they used back in the day when they didn't have computer imagery or they didn't have as good of, CGI and stuff. So it's really neat to see that there are people out there still making movies like that, and you can feel the charm of it. And it's nice. It's just nice. Even
as simple as just the same window view from the train, and you see all these soldiers on a train station. I think this was going back to the hotel. Mm-hmm. The train stops, and then this smoke showing that the train has stopped, and the steam from the engine is being released. And there's just a guy over there with
like
smoke,
a fogger or something.
Yeah, fog machine or something, just fogging up the area to make it look like the train.
Yeah. It's great old Hollywood style. I love
that stuff. There's some Instagram accounts that you can follow that will show you a lot of the old, like really old school 30s, 40s techniques that they use. The practical effects of whether it's smoke or water effects, background, matte paintings. I just watched the guy, one of the practical effects supervisors, I think he was an effects supervisor. Anyway, he worked on John Carpenter's The Thing. Yeah. And they were just talking about how they did this really great reveal of the title. It was just for the title where it just kind of almost... You'd think that they used a computer to do it, but this movie takes place in the 80s, and the way that's revealed, the thing is revealed, and it's like the thing is like the title screen is like burning away to reveal the title, and he's describing how he had a fish bowl, an aquarium filled with smoke and a trash bag, and had bright light behind it, and took a cigarette lighter and just burned the trash bag away to reveal the title. So when you rewatch it, you can see this black burning away and revealing the title, and you're like, that was a trash bag? Yeah. Like it's taking place in space and there's a spaceship in it. It's so clever, and the cleverness behind
of old
Hollywood effects like that.
And
it's great so charming and fun.
It's great that people still utilize that, when everything can be done with CG these days, and in fact everything is sort of done with CG these days. There's a reason that this movie is on this charming little Wes Anderson film is on this list, and like any of the modern King Kongs aren't, right? Like movies that are essentially animated, but they look so real and there are actual people in them, but they're just animated films with live action, people in front of it. It's
like an updated Roger Rabbit.
It's an updated Roger Rabbit without the fun use of practical effects, because everything is digitized these days. And, sometimes it's great. Like, look at Interstellar. A lot of CG in that and a lot of practical effects, but it's still a fucking beautiful film. And then you've got Kong versus Godzilla, or Godzilla X Kong or whatever, which is...
just a CG fest.
Yeah, just a CG fest and a bit of a dumpster fire.
Which could still be fun in its own way.
Yeah,
and
fun popcorn movies.
Just fun popcorn movie.
Stupid turn your brain off for 2-hour movies.
You have to turn your brain off to watch Godzilla and Kong.
But with Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel, you don't turn your brain off. You let your brain admire it and then get into it and get involved and then be crushed by it.
I know we didn't talk about it really when we started the podcast, but one of the things I love about Wes Anderson movies, besides the way they look and flow and the practical effects of it and how fun they can be.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect of it is just the way exposition is done.
Yes.
And it's usually done through a narrator.
Yes.
But the narrator always sounds like it's a book.
Yeah, the narrator, I mean, yeah, this is a very Wes Anderson thing. Like, the Royal Tenenbaums is very storyteller-esque. Obviously, Fantastic Mr. Fox was too. But yeah, it's very much like somebody is reading you a story and giving you exposition, as opposed to, like, the TV doing it, or this is
the
Takana.
news station, or the...
You don't want to play with her sword.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
Anyways, it's the way that man writes. I mean, the way that man writes anything is charming, but yeah, his exposition is delightful. So when we are first introduced to Jeff Goldblum as Deputy Kovacs, who is the estate lawyer for Tilda Swinton's estate and will, I genuinely thought, because again, I had forgotten so much about this movie, I genuinely forgot that he was one of the bad guys. I thought that he was one of the guys that helped frame Gustav for the murder of Tilda Swinton's character. Like, I saw him and I was like, damn, he's hot, and damn, he's definitely the bad guy. It turns out he's not. He really is just a lawyer who's devoted to the rule of law, who wants to clarify this kind of insane will. And it's not just a straightforward will. There's all sorts of amendments and letters.
So many papers.
There's a whole box that he dumps out that's filled with all different, like, anywhere from napkins to scrolls to, like, proper legal documents that he has to work out. And then he discovers that there keeps being mention of another legal, like, document that nobody can find. And it's all quite funny. But he ends up getting trailed and eventually murdered by Joplin, by Willem Dafoe's Joplin. And I thought that particular scene where Joplin is following Kovacs,
chasing him into the museum,
is so well done. It was so fraught and tense, but also
the camera angles,
charmingly funny.
The sets, the different areas of the museum.
The noise of all their feet, because they're in this big empty museum, and so you could hear their feet echoing through the hallways. Like, it was so delightfully well done. And then when you finally think that Jeff Goldblum's going to get away, he doesn't.
You see this hand, the hand with the skull rings, grab his shoulder.
And then
the door closes on his hand, and you just see 4 fingers fall to the ground,
mm-hmm.
and then that same Willem Dafoe hand just picking up each finger one at a time.
Yeah. I thought that was just such a brilliant... I especially loved how, like, Willem Dafoe's character was smart enough to know that his footsteps, his falling footsteps were making noise. So he takes his shoes off and is now sneaking around in his socks, which is how he gets the one-up on Kovacs. Like, it was all really, really incredibly well done and properly tense. It's a very good sequence. I would say it's my favorite sequence in the film, but then we got the jailbreak.
Oh, the jailbreak.
The jailbreak
so good.
Is so... I mean, fucking how was Wes Anderson going to do a jailbreak? Just like that.
Just like that. That's how you do a jailbreak.
Somehow delightfully layered. It seems like they are constantly descending into, like... the thing about this jailbreak is it's not like the Shawshank Redemption where they dig a hole into the sewer line and they escape
just
that way.
Just crawl through the sewer pipe and then get out.
It almost seems like they've got to go down and go back up and go back down and go back up, and they're going in and out of all these different rooms, and, like, it makes no sense as to why they've got to tunnel down through their wall, but then they've got to take a ladder down through the general population that they're all with anyways. Like,
it's very
convoluted.
Tall prison with many stories, and
many
they almost get caught. Yeah, this whole movie's full of layers. They almost get caught by another prisoner
mm-hmm.
who sees them and tries to call a guard over, and that's when our tall prisoner with the scar
who loves mush
and
saves the day,
wants to, because of what Gustav does for him with just a simple thing of giving him mush with salt and being kind to him.
Mm-hmm.
And feeding him probably kills that prisoner, or at least knocks him out. And then they descend even lower, where there's a bunch of guards waiting down there.
Yeah, like, I don't know if they think that somebody's going to break into it, or if it's just like a break room or what. But yeah, they discover all these guards in the sub-basement, and one of the inmates jumps in and kills them all and then is killed himself. And then they've got to come up through a sewer pipe in the end. Like, the whole sequence is so charmingly funny. And then what I also found highly amusing, right, is that once Gustav and Zero are reunited after the prison escape, they're reunited in, like, the prison yard, essentially. And Harvey Keitel and his goons kind of run off and catch a bus. And then they immediately murder the bus driver and, like, drag his body back to the back of the bus and then escape on the bus, which I found so funny because this is all happening in the background while Gustav is kind of, like, yelling at Zero for forgetting to bring a change of clothes and a fake mustache and, you know, his perfume.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you not bring my perfume? I've been in prison for all this time. I need my cologne. And all of this is happening just behind them. And they're just standing in the yard, in the prison yard, after a prison break, having this long conversation that then turns into a very deep conversation because that's when Zero gives Gustav his backstory about being a refugee from a war where his entire family was murdered in front of him and all this tragic shit. And
then Gustav immediately was just like, I'm so sorry.
Like, what a terrible man I am. I apologize. Like... Gustav is just such a great character. Completely off topic, but kind of on topic. I just was wondering in my head, like, oh, what is Wes Anderson up to, right? And he's finishing up his next film called The Phoenician Scheme. I think that's how you pronounce that. But the cast is Benedict Cumberbatch, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Benicio del Toro, Rupert Friend, Bill Murray, and Michael Cera. And Riz Ahmed.
Ooh, I
like
love Riz Ahmed.
Charlotte Gainsbourg, but I'm just like, fucking Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Hanks in the same movie and Riz Ahmed. Yes, please and thank you.
Wes Anderson is one of those directors who always takes actors that he's already worked with. He's got his supporting cast that always does film. Like, you're always waiting for, when's Bill Murray going to show up?
Yes.
When is Jason Schwartzman going to show up? Is
Where's
there going to be a Wilson, Luke, or Owen? Like,
where's the Wilson?
Yeah.
Although very rarely is it Luke. It's always Owen.
It used to be Luke. Like, there were a couple.
Friends, if you haven't seen Home Fries with Luke Wilson and Drew Barrymore, it was this great, weird little comedy that came out back in, like, 99, 2000. And it has always been marketed as a rom-com, right? But it's not. It's a very, very funny, very dark comedy. And it's got Luke Wilson, Drew Barrymore, Catherine O'Hara, the Busey son. Just whatever the Busey son is. Yeah, Busey's son. It's got a Juicy Busey in it. And it is hysterical and very dark and really wacky, and it's all about this pregnant woman, you know, who she got pregnant with a married man's child and didn't realize it, and then when the man's wife finds out, she gets her sons, played by Busey and Luke Wilson, to, like, murder the dad, and then they've got to now go after the pregnant woman, and it's just a series of delightful little mishaps. But Home Fries, I cannot recommend it enough. I know I've made Caveman watch it. It's
been a while, and I don't remember too much about it. I might need to revisit it as well.
Oh, I'm always down to watch that movie. It's delightful.
And there's a bunch of Wes Anderson movies that I still haven't seen. Like, I haven't seen The French Dispatch. I haven't seen Darjeeling Limited. I haven't seen Rushmore.
Well, maybe we need to have a Wes Anderson fest. You know, maybe, like, on our, although it's hard because now our free days are taken up so much by this podcast that every time you hear us say, oh, we need to watch that movie again, we don't. Because somebody's too busy editing, and when he's editing, I'm usually, like, doing other things, tending to the kids, laying in my bed, relaxing at work. We still have jobs. So... And then when we do finally sit down for a few minutes to watch TV together, it's just been like Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and, like, sitcoms that are easier to watch than full movies.
Short less than 30-minute shows.
Like, I've only watched the second half of Bridgerton once. I need to get back on that. But I'm just sometimes too damn busy.
I'm behind on so many television shows.
Yeah, because this podcast is, this wonderful, little project that we're doing has really taken all of our time.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, it's
to
great.
do this. But
it doesn't necessarily give us time to sit down and watch Asteroid City.
It's why, one of the things I love doing on this podcast is recommending things I have seen, talking about things that I want to see, and hopefully the listeners out there also who don't have a podcast and maybe a little more time on their hands.
Yeah, we'll sit down and be like, you know what? I want to watch a weird little movie with Catherine O'Hara and Drew Barrymore that I promise you is fucking hysterically good. I promise you. And maybe you'll hear this and you'll be like, oh, Home Fries is streaming on something. I don't know if it is, but I'll watch it. Or Tu Wong Fu or anything. Yeah, we hope that you really do take our movie recommendations seriously because we love doing this and we love film, so we keep going.
Maggie, how is that painting, The Boy Who Holds an Apple or whatever
Boy with Apple?
Boy with Apple. How is it priceless? They don't explain how it's
I genuinely couldn't
so
tell
money.
you because it's a very ugly little painting. Although it's quite funny because it was painted for the film.
Oh, interesting.
The original painting of it hangs in Wes Anderson's office. I think it's just meant to evoke a particular art style, and because of its sort of how old it was, and maybe the fact that it was only held in one family for a very long time made it priceless, but it's a very ugly little painting. One thing that I don't... Okay, so there's one choice in this movie that I don't fully understand, and that's why Saoirse Ronan's character, Agatha, needed to have a wine birthmark in the shape of Mexico on her face. That is whimsical to the point of being absurd in a way that even... It's a little too much for Wes Anderson. It makes no sense.
Just that Wes Anderson quirkiness of this...
Yeah,
person needs a massive birthmark on their face.
If the birthmark had been the perfect map to the hiding location of the painting accidentally, that would have been more fun for me. But the fact that it's just Mexico and it's there, I don't get it. I don't know. That's the one thing that I'm like, why would you?
A choice.
Why would you cover up Saoirse Ronan's gorgeous face with that? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
speaking of Saoirse Ronan, we are going to be talking about her again
very soon.
5 episodes. 5 weeks from the release of this episode, we're going to be talking about Lady Bird.
And then very soon after, Little Women, right?
Little Women is the last episode of 2024.
That just made my brain hurt. Wait a minute. So in December,
when
we get around to talking about Little Women.
Yeah, Little Women will be the last Wednesday of December.
Oh my god. And that's if we don't bump it for a Christmas episode, which I'm very excited for a Christmas episode. No, I haven't seen Lady Bird. I look forward to watching it. If you like Saoirse Ronan and you haven't seen the movie Brooklyn, I highly recommend that. It's this really charming and sweet little story about an Irish immigrant who leaves in the 20s, I would say. She comes over to America. Maybe it's the 40s. I think it's the 40s. This Irish immigrant played by Saoirse Ronan comes over to America and tries to make a life for herself over here. And it's sweet, and it totally made me cry. And it was one of those movies that I think I got up very early on some weekend, and everybody was still asleep. The kids were pretty young, and I just pulled it up on streaming and watched it and cried for 90 minutes and had a great old time. So again, movie recommendations with Movie Mingle. If you haven't seen Brooklyn with Saoirse Ronan, I highly recommend it. It's a very sweet little film.
So, Maggie, what would you rate Grand Budapest Hotel?
I would give this movie a solid 4. Yeah, I'd give it a solid 4. It's a great little film. It's really fun. It's really sweet. Weirdly, as much as I enjoy it, and I do enjoy it, I don't know how often I'm going to rewatch it. It's great. And every time I feel like I do watch this movie in the future, I'm going to be like, damn, this is such a good little movie. Why don't I watch this movie more? But the reality is I'm just probably not. So everybody does a great job in it. It's a solid film. It's not a 5-star for me, just because it doesn't exactly evoke the emotions that I would want to have evoked out of it for 5 stars. But yeah, I'd give it 4. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's whimsical.
Yeah.
It's quirky and
the cast is babes across the board.
More than anything, like the story it's a good story. It's not a great story.
Yeah.
It's a good story, but what it does have is a great cast.
Yes. The story is somewhat lacking, but the
performances.
cast is incredible, which is why it gets 4 stars. What about you?
Yeah, I was going between 4 and 4.5 because I do really like this one compared to all other Wes Anderson movies. I'm one of the few people who think Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou is one of Wes Anderson's best films.
You do love that movie, and I don't.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
To each their own. But I'd give it a 4. I think I'll stick. Yeah, 4. It's a solid 4.
It's a solid 4, and I realize that we haven't talked at length a lot about this one, but there's not a whole lot to say other than just like, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's charming. It's on, Prime? Max? What did we watch this on?
We watched it on Prime, but that's because I owned it.
Oh, yeah, you bought it ages ago. Yeah.
So, Maggie.
Yes, Caveman?
I have 2 questions for you.
Hit it.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Is it always going to be that?
Now that it's easy for me just to do that.
Is it always going to be that, though? Can't you ever surprise me with
one
of Oscar Isaac's better lines?
They're better lines?
From Oscar Isaac. I'm coming over this table at you. Oh my god, this new podcast setup is a blessing and a curse. Jesus Christ, I love you and I hate you so much.
Anyway. So, do you think the Grand Budapest Hotel would have been a better movie with the presence of Oscar Isaac?
Sure, why not?
I mean, everybody else is in this movie.
I think Oscar Isaac needs to get on that Wes Anderson train.
Oh, one of these days.
Could you imagine?
I mean, everybody ends up on a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, Wes Anderson works with people that he loves, and there's no reason why he can't love Oscar Isaac like the rest of us.
I'm happy, like you said earlier, that Benedict Cumberbatch gets to be in a full-length one instead of just him and Wes Anderson. They got an Oscar.
Yeah, for the Wonderful World of Harry Sugar, or whatever it's called. Yeah, and Benedict Cumberbatch is such a great actor. I know that he's got a goofy name, and he wasn't stellar in the second Doctor Strange. Well, actually, he was, but the second Doctor Strange itself wasn't stellar. But Benny is a great actor, and I'm kind of glad that he gets to be a part of the whimsical world of Wes Anderson, as opposed to always getting just sad movies about gay men in the war. But anyways, yeah, Oscar Isaac should definitely be in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Actually, he was in 1917 as well.
Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yeah.
Was it in 1917?
Yeah, he's one of the...
Oh, yeah, he was. I kind of forgot about that. And he was in War Horse also.
Wow.
Yeah.
He really likes...
That man is meant... He's British and he's tall. He's meant for war movies. Yeah.
Okay, second question.
Yep.
Which character would you have had Oscar Isaac play?
Well, that's a tricky one because it would be hard to replace any of the amazing actors that are in this film, right? Like, I couldn't imagine him being Adrian Brody's character. I couldn't imagine being Jude Law's character because Jude Law has that certain we barely talked about Jude Law in this movie, but he is delightful and just so hot. I would never replace Oscar Isaac with Willem Dafoe. But I think that he would have been Serge pretty well. Serge, who was played by Matthew Amalric. For no other reason than although Serge, who plays the head butler of Tilda Swinton's house, who knows the truth about the second will and ultimately has to go into hiding and is then killed by Joplin towards the end of the movie. I think that would have been a decent Oscar Isaac role, kind of like a smaller film, a smaller role that he could have fit into nicely. He could have been one of the maitre d's the concierges, in the the Society of the Crossed Keys or whatever that was called.
Sure.
You could have put him in there as a quick cameo. He could have honestly just been in the background, just walking by, and I would have been like, oh my god, is that Oscar Isaac? This movie gets 6 stars. So, yeah, why not? Or, because I like to do this, he just completely replaces Saoirse Ronan, again, head to tail, costumes, nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Except it's him. Except though, Saoirse Ronan does a great job, so I guess I would have said that for a Léa Seydoux character, which is small. But still, put Oscar Isaac in drag. I want that. And that was this week's episode of Movie Mingle on the Grand Budapest Hotel. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it for you. We really do enjoy making this silly little podcast with you. It is a great joy in our lives, and we're glad that you love it too. Feel free to rate and review, leave us 5 stars or whatever you feel is worthy on whatever podcast platform you listen to. You can always reach out to us at movieminglepod@gmail.com. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at movieminglepod. We've got our own YouTube channel, YouTube, if that's your jam. And coming up next week, I'm very excited because we get to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And if you think that I am insane for some cute boys, just you wait, because I'm going to talk for at least a half an hour on Matt Murdock, my beloved sweet soft man. And don't forget, this Saturday we are dropping a very special bonus episode where we are going to watch Death at a Funeral, both the American and British versions, and discuss them, rate them, compare them, and have just a jolly old time with that great film, by the way. It's a fantastic movie. Both of them hold up solidly, and we'll be able to say definitively which one is better. It's probably going to be the British one. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I really look forward to all of our wonderful listeners hearing that sweet, weird little bonus episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our friends, go out and go mingle. Bye.
Are you an effective team?
We are an effective team.
Let them fight.
How did you just do that?
I'm a really good lawyer.
Here on Caladan, we ruled by air power and sea power. On Arrakis, we need to cultivate desert power.
Welcome, Mr. Beach. What's that bar? I'm a little confused.
Well, we wouldn't want that, would we?
I don't want to brag, but I will. I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
What is that?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Toga, 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 toga.